Good morning, viewers and listeners of Concerned Citizens Media. Thank you for coming back again. So September 2nd, 2021. Appreciate you coming back. I have some updates to share with you. The war in a northern front between TDF and all the forces belongs to other groups, Ethiopian Defense Force, Amhara militia, plus all the militia brought from all the region, still going on, very tense. But the areas captured by TDF still in their hand. Even though the Ethiopian National Defense Force, the Amhara militia, the militias came from all over Ethiopia, tried to recapture those areas from TDF, but so far they are not successful. The only claim I see is I think Debre Zabit, but no confirmation from independent media. But the Ethiopian media claim retaking that. But Gashana, Lalibela, Waldia, Khmer Dingai, Nefas Maucha, and other areas still under the control of TDF, according to the information I received from different media. The fight also very tense around Wallo, Dese, and the Kombolcha area, and also in Afar region, Semera, very tense. So TDF is Tigray Defense Force intensified its operation, surrounded these towns, and attempting to take under its control, but it's a heavy fighting. We know TDF is one region fighting with more than maybe 7 region, I think 8 region, plus the federal force. So it's fighting with heavy armed forces. Professional forces from Ethiopian Defense Force and the Amhara Special Force, the Oromo Special Force, the Afar, the Somalia, all this. So, but they didn't get that much ground. They are trying to recapture Waldia and other areas. So far, they are not successful, even though their media claims, they claim, but their claims are not true. They lie. The Ethiopian media, they lie. So that is the update on that area. So the attempt for recapture is very tense, heavy fighting going on, and probably the issue with Dese and the Kombolcha, it will be closed within days. But no end in sight. It's surrounded by TDF forces. Samara is surrounded by TDF forces. Dese is surrounded by TDF forces. But they're gonna fall down. We don't know yet. Very tough. The other side is Oromo Liberation Army also intensified its operation. As I said before, they are also gaining ground in taking some towns and the villages, cities from Prosperity Party controlled militias and Ethiopian Defense Forces. And one report says in eastern Wallagga they took a city called Sisaga and freed about 100 Oromo prisoners. Those prisoners are just taken into prison by Prosperity Party officials and Oromo Special Force, just blaming them as a supporter of OLF. So thankfully, Oromo Liberation Army took control of Sisaga in eastern Wallagga and freed more than 100 prisoners. That's very, very encouraging. Oromo Liberation Army also expanding its operation in eastern and western Hararghe region. Especially there is one report OLF conducting its military operation against Prosperity Party militia and Ethiopian National Defense Force in Mieso, western Wallagga region. So it's intensifying, extending its force, its operations into different zones of Oromia. So it's not only in eastern, western Wallagga plus Guji and Borana. Now it's expanding to RC and also eastern and western Hararghe plus to the central, close to Mr. Abiy Ahmed headquarters in Addis Ababa. They are around that area too. Their operation is also expanding, doing good job in that area. The TDF, Tigray Defense Force, also fixed Takaze Bridge and made it operational now, according to the report. Takaze River was purposely destroyed by Ethiopian Defense Forces when they left Tigray region, so that TDF will not follow them. So they just destroyed that bridge. Now that bridge is fixed by TDF, Tigray Defense Forces, and it became operational. So they can use it to transport whatever they want through Tigray and to other Amhara areas. So that's another one, the update also on Afar, Somalia region conflict is still tense. It's not settled. So that's confrontation. This is just between Prosperity Party, between two regions led by Prosperity Party. Somalia Prosperity Party against Afar Prosperity Party. So there is something wrong between the party itself. The conflict is still tense. It's not settled between Afar and the Somalia region. So that's a little bit update, and I will start, before I start reading others, I will start with a short briefing from State Department. Repeated call on Ethiopian government on humanitarian aid and other issues. Let's see. There we go. So this is a very short one. Then I will read. Then I have also a couple of videos at the end of the program.
First on Ethiopia. Nearly 1 month after USAID Administrator Samantha Power was on the ground there in Ethiopia, she emphasized the dire humanitarian catastrophe that faces over 5.2 million people. The situation on the ground has only gotten worse since then. From the beginning of the crisis in northern Ethiopia, the United States has called for a negotiated ceasefire and unhindered humanitarian access. The truth is that access has been limited to but a trickle by the government of Ethiopia. Warehouses sit empty in Tigray because the government has put a stranglehold around the region. Trucks with life-saving assistance continue to remain idle, as Administrator Power herself lamented a month ago, while desperate Ethiopians slide closer to famine. While we are concerned about any and all reports of humanitarian assistance being diverted from those for whom it is intended, humanitarian assistance must be allowed to reach populations in need by the government of Ethiopia and all parties. That includes the TPLF. These parties must cease the violence that only worsens the current situation.
Okay, so that's a short briefing from State Department on the situation, humanitarian situation, and the concern about the ongoing war. So it's a repeated call, and the Ethiopian government is not implementing. As he said, humanitarian need is not reaching, and the warehouse are empty. So I don't know what the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed waiting and what benefit it's getting by preventing humanitarian aids by using different tactics, searching as an excuse, searching the trucks. That's fine, you can search, but you cannot use that as a tactic to deny the humanitarian workers access to Tigray region. So this is a repeated accusation. It's a repeated concern from the United States. Even I have one from the United Nations. They are repeatedly calling on Ethiopian government to have this humanitarian to get through. They say they need at least 100 trucks a day, but so far, no response. Very limited response. So that is a little bit update. I have more videos at the end, but let's get started with a little bit reading materials. This one is about the Amhara state, Amhara region calling on students, teachers, and university professors to join the army. So it's a desperate attempt by this region, to galvanize all human beings. They already have called on all capable citizens in that region to join the army. Plus, the federal government also called all Ethiopians to join the army, the federal police, and to fight TDF. That's not enough. How many more people they need? Now they come to students, professors, and others to join. They have federal army, Ethiopian National Defense Force. They have all militia from all region, 7 or 8 region. They have also federal police and the local police. They have Eritrean Defense Force. So this all is not enough. Do they really need students, professors, instead of allowing them to expand knowledge? So the situation is very, very dangerous, very tough for that country, very tough. And so they call on this. Let me read. Amhara State calls on high school, technical and vocational, university students and the teachers to join the fight against Tigray armed forces. In a statement issued on August 30, 2021, the Amhara Regional State has called on middle and high school students, students of preparatory, technical and vocational training institutions, university students, graduates, teachers, as well as all youth who are physically capable to organize in their respective areas and respond to the call to bury the enemy. Even middle school and high school. Okay. The statement said the region was facing a war for its survival waged against it by forces affiliated with TPLF. A war of revenge and cruelty is being inflicted on the people of the regional state, the statement said, adding it was a crucial time for us to stand together more than ever to bury our enemies and ensure our survival in the face of the threat to our very existence. That's their claim. Accordingly, the regional state called on all able-bodied high school and tertiary students, as well as teachers and all the youth whose age and health qualify and are fit for military service, to do their part by joining and strengthening our defense forces and special forces and playing a supportive role. The state also urged all to do everything possible, directly or indirectly, including up to sacrifices of lives, to ensure that the struggle for our survival that we have started ends successfully. The regional state accuses Tigray's forces of killing, rape, looting, and the destruction of public and private properties in Amhara and Afar states, and said we must all be soldiers to protect our loved ones and the institution around us from destruction. On July 26, Agenyo Teshager, the president of Amhara state, called on all eligible youths in the region to respond to the campaign for survival. The call was preceded by an earlier similar call by the region and was addressed the nations, nationalities, and the people of Ethiopia to mobilize to defend the region against Tigrayan forces after the latter crossed into the region and launched military offensives. So I don't know what left to call now. They call middle school, high school teachers, technical school students to join the military for Amhara's survival. That's what they say. So credit for this at this standard. So it's really a desperate attempt, very desperate attempt by regional government plus by Ethiopian state government. They are not winning, despite all the human resources they already mobilized. And they show us their graduation ceremony. The number is, very high, very extremely high. And I don't know why they call on these middle school, high school, and university professors. This is just desperate. They don't know what to do. They are not winning the war. They are not winning the war. And they are not also listening to Europeans, US, and other concerned Ethiopians about settling these issues through dialogue and reconciliation. They repeated call for ceasefire ignored by this group. They want to be victorious by military means. They want to show their force. There are millions and millions. And Tigrayans are very small, like 6 million, they claim. They can finish them all. They said already on the previous talk. So they are going that way. They are attempting to win by any means, mobilizing all Ethiopians against Tigrayans instead of finding a better solution. And if they, I don't know, if they are successful in this campaign, nobody can challenge them. The Amhara region, those elites, they will be very tough to deal with them in Ethiopian politics. So I hope they will not be successful in this way. There is no a military solution for this. They have to listen. They are not winning. They are trying. 7 days a week they are fighting, but they are not successful. TDF are challenging them, taking more ground from them, and they are running away with just one bullet shot. That is the challenge they are facing. Nothing left for them. They call on all Ethiopians. They call on students. They have enough human power, but something is not right in that sense. Okay. Sudanese Army Chief of Staff hold military talks in Qatar. The Chief of Staff of the Sudanese Armed Force is visiting Doha for talks on military cooperation with Qatar, said the Sudanese military media on Tuesday. Lieutenant General Mohammed Osman al-Husseini held a meeting with Lieutenant General Ghanim bin Shaheen al-Ghani, Chief of Staff of the Qatar Armed Forces, said the military media. The meeting touched on ways to strengthen relation between the two brotherly armies, read the statement. Osman, who arrived on Monday, is expected to meet other military officials. The two armies conducted joint military exercise in December 2019 in Arkwet of the Red Sea state. In November 2014, the two countries signed a memorandum of understanding on military cooperation between them in various fields. So that's Sudan having some kind of military cooperation with Qatar. Israel opposes Biden plan to reopen U.S.-Palestinian mission in Jerusalem. This is a troubled region. Okay. Israel said on Wednesday that a U.S. plan to reopen its consulate in Jerusalem that has traditionally been a base for diplomatic outreach to Palestinians is a bad idea and could destabilize Prime Minister Naftali Bennett's new government. The prior administration of President Donald Trump signaled support for Israeli claim on Jerusalem as its capital by moving the United States Embassy there from Tel Aviv. It later subsumed the consulate in West Jerusalem in that mission. It was among several moves that incenses the Palestinians who want East Jerusalem as a capital of hope for future state. President Joe Biden has pledged to restore ties with Palestinians, back a two-state solution, and move forward with reopening the consulate. It has been closed since 2019, with Palestinian affairs handled by the embassy. So Biden is opening the consulate in Jerusalem, which was closed in 2019. Okay. We think it is a bad idea, Israel Foreign Minister Yair Lapid told a news conference when asked about the reopening. Jerusalem is the sovereign capital of Israel and Israel alone, and therefore we do not think it is a good idea. That's Israel's claim. We know that the Biden administration has a different way of looking at this, but since it is happening in Israel, we are sure they are listening to us very carefully. Wasil Abu Yusuf, a senior Palestinian Liberation Organization official, told Reuters that the Israeli rejection of the consulate opening was expected. adding, they are trying to maintain the status quo and block any political solution. That's the Palestinian side. Asked about Lapid's remark, a U.S. Embassy spokesperson said, as Secretary Blinken announced in May, the United States will be moving forward with the process to reopen our consulate in Jerusalem. We don't have additional information to share at this time. The spokesperson said the United States was not reversing its decision to move the United States Embassy to Jerusalem, nor its recognition of the city as Israel's capital. Israel captured the city's east, along with the occupied West Bank in Gaza in 1967 Middle East War. It was captured from Palestinians. Now Israel claims its own. You captured in a war and they claim somebody's land as your own. It deems all of Jerusalem as its undivided capital, a status not recognized internationally. In recognizing Jerusalem as Israeli capital in 2017, Trump said he was not taking a position on any final status issues, including the specific boundaries of the Israeli sovereignty in Jerusalem. So Trump recognized in 2017 Jerusalem as the capital city of Israel instead of Tel Aviv. Bennett, a nationalist, a top across partisan coalition, opposes Palestinian statehood. Reopening the consulate could unsettle Bennett's government, which ended long-term Premier Benjamin Netanyahu's tenure in June, Lapid said. We have an interesting and yet delicate structure of our government, and we think this might destabilize this government, and I don't think the American administration wants this to happen, he said. Division among Palestinians also cast doubt about the prospect for diplomacy, Lapid said. I am a devoted believer in the two-state solution, but we have to admit the fact this is not feasible in the current situation. I don't think that's true. I don't think he's a devout believer of two-state solution. Most of the authorities in Israel, they don't want Palestinians to have a state. They want to expand the occupation. That's clear. But so far they took an extended land from Palestinians through the time. The longer it takes to form the two-state solution, the more land the Palestinians lose to Israelis. And nobody can do anything. Nobody can challenge Israel. The United States, the United Nations, nobody. They can do whatever they want to do. They have the power and they have the money. And the United States is, mostly the Republicans are behind that. Okay, credit for this one is Reuters news agency. And I hope the two-state solution will come sooner than later for Palestinians before they lose all the lands to Israel. The longer it takes, the more land they lose. Okay, this is U.S. State Department on the creation of United Nations Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. As part of the administration's focus on racial justice and equality abroad and at home, the United States is proud to commemorate the first International Day for People of African Descent and support the recently created UN Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. We are proud to have helped shape the mandate for the United Nations Permanent Forum for People of African Descent and supported the historic adoption of its resolution in August. These important efforts promote the extraordinary contribution of Africans, Black Americans, and the African diaspora around the world. We will use this forum as a multilateral platform for the United States and others to confront the scourge of racism, racial discrimination, and xenophobia globally. So that's yeah, this is good. This is good for to have African descent representative, permanent representative at the UN, and the commitment to fight racism, discrimination, and xenophobia globally, which is good. So we appreciate the United States for standing for this. Credit State Department. Okay, this is the last part. This is also the United States condemning the recent Houthi attack against Saudi Arabia. This is also press statement from Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State. The United States strongly condemns the recent Houthi attack against Saudi Arabia that struck the civilian airport in Amhara, wounding 8 civilians and damaging commercial airliner. Since the beginning of the year, Saudi Arabia has endured more than 240 attacks from the Houthis, who have endangered the Saudi people alongside more than 70,000 US citizens residing in Saudi Arabia. The Houthis have also intensified their attacks inside of Yemen in recent weeks, particularly their offensive on Marib. This costly stalemate offensive is exacerbating Yemen's humanitarian crisis. The Houthi attacks are perpetuating the conflict, prolonging the suffering of the Yemeni people, and jeopardizing peace efforts at critical moment. We again call on the Houthis to uphold a ceasefire and engage in negotiation under United Nations auspices. So that's a press statement from U.S. on the attack in Saudi Arabia by Houthi rebels, U.S. State Department. So that's also another humanitarian crisis in that region. So I hope it will be end peacefully. The United States also to blame in the past for, giving weapons to Saudi Arabia to use it as, to bombard Yemen. So that is the situation. Now let's see 2 videos. One is USAID director gave interview to Ethiopian Broadcasting Corporation to clarify the Ethiopian media propaganda and all these pro-Abiy Ahmed propaganda medias, not only EBC, Fana, Walter, and others private pro-Abiy private media also, broadcasting anti-United States propaganda, and also accusing the United States giving like hashish or drug for TDF, and also later on it was changed into like energy sources instead of drug. First, they claim drug. Yeah, the United States is giving drug to uh, Tigray Defense Forces through humanitarian aid. That's a very tough accusation. That's a very tough propaganda against the United States and all these international aid organizations. So Abiy Ahmed is playing with fire. Really, he is playing with fire, and also, ordering all these media, government media, and the pro-Abiy private medias to spread false rumors, propagandas against the United States, against the European Union. Uh, it will not help you to victory. It will, this is, it's very false propaganda. Very false propaganda. The United States is not providing drugs. This is false. So, the U.S. aid director in Addis Ababa have a chance to explain his position. Listen to him. Then after that, the United Nations very short briefing. Then we'll conclude today's presentation. Okay, let's see. There we go.
This summer, dress to chill in Foamies by Skechers. Foamies are colorful, lightweight footwear for the whole family that are completely waterproof. Head to the beach or wherever you're keeping cool. Then just wash them off.
This
Get
advertisement.
comfortable in Foamies by Skechers.
Of course, the
There we go.
United States government was very concerned about the recent, I think, misrepresentations and inaccurate reporting across some of the state-run media channels about USAID information, about USAID assistance in the country. We wanted to make sure that the Ethiopians got other sides of the story, that they heard directly from us that in no sense and in no history of humanitarian assistance here in Ethiopia has USAID ever provided any kind of food or drugs or any other kind of assistance to TPLF or to armed groups in Ethiopia.
So if USAID did not allow them to access aid, how could the TPLF fighters get your aid?
Sure. So I think that's a great opportunity to clarify. And unfortunately, in a time of war and conflict, there are ways that armed groups get food and non-food items from humanitarian actors, of course. We took this allegation very, very seriously. So we know that we have not delivered any high-energy biscuits in the Tigray region since February of 2021. But as a result, we started thinking to ourselves, how did these TPLF soldiers get access to USAID food and maybe even non-food somewhere? Well, unfortunately, I actually can't tell you how that happened, but I will tell you, in conflict zones, I think there are probably three ways that armed groups and soldiers might get access to humanitarian supplies. First, number one, is that often food is sold to soldiers and maybe even to other citizens. And so everybody who travels around the country in Ethiopia, and you go into rural and even maybe urban local markets, you see a lot of humanitarian supplies that are actually being sold, sometimes by people. Maybe they needed cash instead of the food that month, and so they're selling their food assistance that might have been given to them, or non-food assistance. But you see it everywhere around the country. So that's one way that it could have been. Another way is that, of course, we know that some citizens are sympathetic to, in this case, the TPLF. And maybe they gave their food to the soldiers. And then, of course, third is, I think, the worst thing that could happen is when soldiers and armed groups come in and they steal that food or non-food from citizens. And that is absolutely the worst case scenario, is when the people who are so needy and were recipients of assistance then ultimately when things are taken away from them and the food is taken right out of their children's mouths. That's when we are facing the really the worst of what armed groups can do in this country. And unfortunately, we are seeing a situation in which, particularly in Amhara, right now, where the TPLF has expanded their very aggressive fight, and we know for a fact in Amhara now we now know that the TPLF has, every town that they've gone into, they've looted the warehouses, they've looted trucks, they have caused a great deal of destruction in all the villages they've visited, and it's a great concern for humanitarians. Humanitarians have fled for their lives, again, throughout the 9 months of the conflict, throughout Afar, Tigray, Amhara. Humanitarians are the ones at the center of the conflict. They're the first ones to go in and provide life-saving assistance, and only when their lives are threatened, or when things are stolen, or when their buildings are looted or burned down, are they the ones to leave. And unfortunately, we've also seen quite a few, I think it's 15 now, of our humanitarian brothers and sisters have lost their lives in the past 9 months of conflict.
So do you believe that the TPLF fighters have been stealing aid from your organization?
I do believe that TPLF has been very opportunistic. Maybe they're stealing from citizens. We don't have proof of this, of course. What we do have proof of is that several of our warehouses have been looted and completely emptied in the areas, particularly Amhara, where the TPLF soldiers have gone into. Yes, we know that that's a fact.
The government has been voicing concern that the
I don't know
TPLF
how he
fighters
said that is a
been
fact
stealing
without
aid,
proof.
which was supposed to be delivered to civilians, and no organization, including USAID, did say anything back then. And now you're telling me that the TPLF fighters might steal aid. Why didn't you say anything back then?
You know, months ago, when the federal forces and aligned with Eritrean forces were in Tigray, there was a lot of theft that was occurring. We came out when we had proof and when we had evidence, and we came out, and first we would speak with the government of Ethiopia. We speak with our counterparts and our colleagues in the Ethiopian government, and usually we were able to resolve a lot of those issues between governments. We now know, because again, new facts have arisen, that in recent weeks, some of our warehouses have been looted and emptied by advancing TPLF troops, and especially in Amhara right now. So it's not that we have disagreed in the past. It's just that the United States doesn't make comments. First of all, we don't make comments about everything. Second of all, we don't make comments based on rumor and accusations. We make comments and we call out misdeeds when we know that when we have facts that support what we want to say. In this case, we are very confident that in recent weeks we have seen TPLF soldiers emptying some of the warehouses.
USAID in the statement indicated that it is feeding 7% of the Ethiopian people. Can you highlight the overall efforts made by your organization in the past 9 months or so?
Thank you for that. I always love to talk about the history of U.S. assistance here, because frankly, this is the largest aid program in the entire world. And it's not just because Ethiopia is going through a challenging time. It's because Ethiopia is absolutely one of our finest and most important partners anywhere in the world. And that's why we invest in Ethiopia. So for instance, just in the past 5 years, we have invested over $4.2 billion here, some of which is humanitarian assistance, but a lot of it is development assistance. When we're working hand in hand with our government partners and the Ethiopian people in places like Somali and Benishangul Gumuz and Gambela, Oromia, Amhara, even Tigray, to make advancements for the benefit of the people here. So we have a very long-standing history in Ethiopia. And of course, we are providing a lot of humanitarian assistance. And I think what we are seeing right now is a result of the U.S. government and the American people's commitment to the Ethiopian people when the Ethiopian people need a helping hand the most. So, for instance, in places that are outside of Tigray, we are providing emergency aid to 3.5 million Ethiopians. Again, this is outside of Tigray and the northern conflict. This is in places like Benishangul Gumuz and Oromia and Somali, SNNP, where communities are still struggling with conflicts, drought, could be desert locust, floods, whatever it might be. We have been providing assistance for a long time. So that's 3.5 million people. We also are a big contributor to the government of Ethiopia-led productive social safety net program. So the PSNP, we support 1.6 million people trying to escape from poverty. And then, of course, as is most aware, because of the conflict right now, we are providing food support to 5 million people in the north right now. So this is, of course, inside of Tigray, but also now in Amhara and Afar. And we'll continue to support Ethiopians during their time of need.
Do you agree with the notion that the relationship between Ethiopia and the U.S. is deteriorating?
I hate to use that word. I think there's some strain or there's some stress in our relationship right now. It's really important, I think, for the United States as a partner of Ethiopia, and we are a committed, passionate partner about our relationship with the Ethiopian people.
The Bold and the BMW. When you drive in a new Bold BMW, we know you're ready to make one of the best decisions of your life. Not only do
As a partner, sometimes we have to raise our voice. Sometimes, like in a good marriage, sometimes we have to say what we're feeling at that moment. We have to provide our advice because maybe we've been through this already, and maybe we see decisions that are being made in our partner, in Ethiopia in this case, that might not be, and we think might not be in Ethiopia's best interest. And so maybe if people look at it as a deterioration of the relationship, frankly, it's a very honest conversation. I will tell you, my relationships with senior Ethiopian government officials has maybe never been better. I have honest, clear communications with my colleagues in the Ethiopian government every single day to talk about ways that we can resolve things together. Unfortunately, we're all very distracted by what's in Twitter or Facebook and what a lot of people in the social media are talking about. That is not always the truth, and I think people need to make sure they're trying to find the truth when they're listening to two sides of an argument.
Finally, the Ethiopian New Year is approaching. Take your time if you have best wish for the Ethiopian people.
Absolutely. So my family and I live in Ethiopia, and we want nothing more than for all Ethiopians to have a very prosperous future. It is in the American people's interest and the U.S. government's interest that Ethiopia be a unified, stable, and prosperous country for all of its citizens. But not just the citizens of today, the future citizens as well. USAID is an organization that's thinking about how do we help our children in the future, 20, 30, 40 years from now, how do we help them become more prosperous? And I think as we go through this new year, I would say there's two things that we need to remember, is that when we think about the conflict, there is no benefit to anyone by continuing the kind of conflict that we see right now. As Ethiopians have taught me, when the elephants continue to fight, the grass will continue to be trampled. And I think the second point that I would call out is that this new year in Ethiopia, over 900,000 Ethiopian citizens are going to be facing famine. and some of those families are not going to survive past the new year. That is what my organization and my government and the American people are so committed to right now, is helping Ethiopians at their time of need.
Mr. Sean Jones, Mission Director of USAID to Ethiopia, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that's the USAID Mission Director, Mr. Shan. Got the opportunity to to clarify the propaganda.
And I will continue with the next part of the
Okay,
briefing.
this is the last part of the update for today. Just a little bit, not all.
There will be time for questions for me. So, today, on climate, a new report by the World Meteorological Organization today said weather-related disasters have increased fivefold and caused 7 times more damage than in the 1970s. Over the past 50 years, weather-related disasters have killed 115
They have
people
a short
every
statement
day
about Ethiopia
and
next
cost
to
some
this one.
$202 million in losses daily. However, improved early warnings and disaster management have meant that the number of deaths has decreased significantly from previous periods. Over the past 50 years, there were more than 11,000 reported disasters globally, with just over 2 million deaths and $3.64 trillion in losses. The report also says that more than 91% of deaths occurred in developing countries, and of the top 10 disasters, the hazards that led to the largest human losses during this period have been droughts, followed by storms, floods, and extreme temperatures. The full report is online. Moving to Ethiopia, our colleagues tell us that the humanitarian situation in Tigray is worsening, with stocks of relief aid, cash, and fuel running very low or depleted. Partners have run out of stocks for food distribution, with the exception of some areas where supplies had already been dispatched. According to our colleagues, the only access route to Tigray via Afar, using the Samara-Abala corridor, has been inaccessible since the 22nd of August due to insecurity and bureaucratic and logistical challenges. We estimate that 100 trucks of food, non-food items, and fuel need to enter Tigray every day to sustain an adequate response. Since the 12th of July to date, less than 10% of the required trucks have gone in. In addition, a minimum of 200,000 liters of fuel is required for the humanitarian response every week. But since the 12th of July, only 282,000 liters have reached Tigray, and none since the 16th of August. Our humanitarian colleagues also warned that the spillover of the conflict in Tigray into neighboring Afar and Amhara continues to affect civilians, resulting in food insecurity, displacement, and the disruption of livelihoods. Some 1.7 million people are estimated to be facing food insecurity in those areas. We stress that all parties to the conflict must allow and facilitate timely, unfettered, safe, and sustained access to all people impacted by the crisis. Turning to Myanmar,
Okay, that's
our
enough.
team there remains concerned by the
So that's the one I want is about Ethiopia. But if you are interested, you can also listen about other countries too. So as you heard, the situation in Tigray is still very bad. Humanitarian aid is not reaching, and the only access road is Samara, Afar, through Afar, and that is also impacted by ongoing conflict. So no food aid passed for almost 10 days now. And so far, it's supposed to be 100 trucks a day, less than 10% aid delivered or access to the region. So the situation is very tough, and more people gonna suffer if this issue is not resolved. I don't know why only one access. Why? That's the Ethiopian government, the Mr. Abiy, purposely using humanitarian aid as a weapon against the Tigrayans, against the Tigrayan people. They could search the plane, and you know, transport the food aid to Tigray, but they don't want to do it. They are creating obstacles. So if the people suffer, they think they can surrender to Prosperity Party. That is their calculation. That's why there are all these restriction and excuses on this humanitarian aid. But the United States and others are, you know, keep calling for unfettered access to humanitarian aid. They keep calling for a ceasefire and a dialogue for the conflict. But so far, no one is listening on Ethiopian side. No one. The federal government, as I read on the, you know, the news and this one and the previous reporting, they are eager to win this war through military means. But, you know, the prime minister is going around different countries to get drones, to get tanks, and whatever, machetes, anything to use for to use for this war, to end this conflict by force. That is their intention. His intention is not to end this war through dialogue, through reconciliation. He's not listening to anybody. But with that attitude, with this kind of attitude, Ethiopia lost Eritrea in 1991. The same attitude, under the name of Ethiopianism, one nation, or some historical background, never been colonized. These are all nonsense. Nobody is talking about colonizing Ethiopia. The United States don't want to colonize. The Europeans, at this time, nobody's talking about colonizing. But to galvanize the people, the Ethiopian media, the prime minister, and the PP officials, they use all these unnecessary excuses to motivate people, to galvanize people against the United States, against European Union, and to encourage Ethiopian people to die in domestic war. So that is the situation. It's not, there is no ending sight. As Mr. Shan, U.S. Aid Mission Director in Ethiopia, said, more than 900,000 people may face famine. So that is the situation, and I hope we pray we may see in this Ethiopian New Year a solution for this conflict and all this ethnic tension, hate, and all this Amhara propaganda and pro-warmongering. I don't know how to say this word, but those who want to encourage, who want to motivate people to fight under the name of Ethiopianism, one country, blah, blah, you know. These are all unnecessary. They have to come to the table to end this war. If not, TDF is doing its job, OLF is doing its job, Benishangul Gumuz Liberation Front, Gambela, Kamant, Agaw, maybe others. They're going to continue the fight. Nobody will accept the Ethiopia under one unitary system, or the kingdom Mr. Abiy Ahmed want to create. Nobody. This is 21st century. So they are dreaming of that, dominating others, language, culture, and self-government. That will not work in Ethiopia and under this 21st century. They have to understand, the Amharas especially. They are the one creating problem in Ethiopia this time. So that's all I have for today. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. And please subscribe to my channel. Comment on my videos. Share with your families and friends. So we can grow Concerned Citizens Media to be the voice for your update, for our updates, the voice and for the voiceless. So long, everyone, and be safe from these Ida-related storms and tornadoes bothering New York, New Jersey, and Maryland. So long, everyone, and see you again with other updates and comments. See you. Bye-bye.